Hi, Darin. How are you?
I'm very good, Siddharth. I'm glad to see you again.
Yeah, likewise. I enjoyed our last chat. And actually, before I get to my main question, we'll just recap. In our last conversation, you spoke about a relationship movement. Can you touch briefly and unpack this concept?
Yeah, no, thank you for that question. I think it's important. What I'm doing in my spare time and all the mischief that I'm getting up to is we are trying to help people make more informed decisions about long-term partners and relationships, and in particularly, the nub of the objective is to try and make sure relationships last a little longer than the current statistics refer to it. So, in order to do that, I'm under no illusion that you're going to flick a switch and it's going to happen. That's not going to happen. And so we understand, or I understand, that this is going to be a process. And that process of change is what I'm defining as a relationship movement. And it's a movement on many fronts. Firstly, it's a movement from the traditional thinking about love and the way we kind of manage relationships that actually have got us into the place where we at, to what's happening currently, where young people have transitioned into what I describe as modern connection. Now, that process, that shift, that introspection, that learning and understanding yourself is what I'm calling a relationship movement and a process. So, great question. And I'm encouraging as many people as possible to actually join the movement.
Another interesting phrase that you used in this movement is comfortable unhappiness. Explain this.
Oh God, yeah. So that phrase has been the subject of many a dinner conversation. So let me kind of unpack that. And again, it comes from some of the stuff we spoke about the last time about my background and the history. And when I talk about connectedness with people in romantic relationships or any relationship for that matter, very often you will find, and I'm sure people will identify with the fact that there are people in relationships that stick it out. They've been in these relationships for a long time. They get themselves into a place where they're really comfortable. And I'm talking about the material stuff firstly. I'll get to the other part in a moment. So they've kind of built a home, built an environment that's comfortable. They might have children together. In-laws might have moved in, or whatever the case might be. But they get themselves into a space where they're really comfortable, and they um, kind of describe themselves. When people see them, they say, "Oh, that's a lovely couple. Everything looks so grand," and actually, they are really comfortable. When you kind of sit with them and unpack some of the truths, you also see that while they are very comfortable, they are also very unhappy. And, we know people in our families, particularly the older folk, who have been around for a long time, and they'll say to you, I stick it out. I've made this bed. I'm going to lie in it. I made this commitment. I stood at the altar or the temple or wherever it might have been. And I vowed that I'm going to see this thing through. And they do. And good for them for being able to do that. But they do it and they compromise themselves. They compromise their own happiness. And they go through their entire life being really comfortable but unhappy. Put those two together, and I kind of phrase it as comfortable unhappiness. So that's kind of how it's defined. Now, this comfort that I spoke about can be material. It can be your house, your car, all the nice things, the nice holidays, all of those things. But it also can be psychological. It can just be, I'm comfortable with this person. I know him or her for a long time. I understand them. And I don't really want to go start all over again and go learning all the stuff I need to learn about somebody else. So, and you'll hear them say, better the devil I know than the one I don't. So They find themselves in that comfortable space and they stick it out. But at the nub of things, they are unhappy. So that's kind of what I define as comfortable unhappiness.
All right, there's a question for you already in the comments here. This is from Jitin Rishika. Hi, Darin. How does one identify when a relationship needs that little pick me up?
Yeah, thank you. Great question. Your relationship is going to be a constant maintenance thing. It's like owning a home or a car or anything like that, and you got to keep on working on it. It's never just going to happen. And if you do not put anything into it, my argument is it's guaranteed to fade. So to make it work, you constantly have to be putting in. Now, for the
Hmm.
person, I can't see their name, is it Rashika?
Yeah.
Rashika, what you got to do is you got to kind of identify of these 7 key elements in your relationship. What are the ones that are most important to you that make you tick, that kind of the big driver in your relationship? And when you've identified those, let's say, for example, if it's communication, and the minute you start feeling like, the communication starting to slip a little bit, what do I need to do? Reintroduce date nights, reintroduce time alone with your partner, get rid of the kids, get rid of your parents. Say, we're not going for biryani at my granny's house on Sunday. You and me are going to the beach alone, and we're going to go and sit and talk. Find things to kind of pick me up, as you say. So, really important. You got to do that. But I think step number 1 is identify, which of these 7 things in your relationship might be needing a little bit of maintenance, and then spend the time on that. A good place to start: buy the book, join the movement. You'll find lots of stuff there. And also, you'll find really cute, playful conversation tools. So, these conversations that you're going to need to have to pick your relationship up, I almost guarantee you'll find a little tool that will help you. You'll see behind me is a picture of a chili. It's a conversation tool about your sexuality. If that part of your life is fading, gonna have some fun with that tool and start a conversation with your partner.
Why do so many people stay in relationships where they feel uncomfortably unhappy rather than choosing change?
Siddharth, in that phrase, when I talk about comfortable unhappiness and the people that stick it out, I argue that the problem, if you unpack those 2 words, has less to do with the unhappiness and a lot more to do with the comfort. Because what we do is we kind of go through life and we have ambitions when we're young, and we kind of have aspirations to achieve various things. And when you start achieving those things through your relationship, you kind of feel like you've arrived. But if in your pursuit of those things, you are not achieving happiness, and you got to sit and identify what are these things that are going to make you happy. If it's not achieving happiness for you, then it becomes a trap. So I argue that in the concept of comfortable unhappiness, the problem lies more with the comfort than the unhappiness. Because
Hmm.
if you know what you're unhappy about, you can kind of start addressing it. But very
Hmm.
often, it is rooted in some of these 7 things that cause relationships to fail. And very often, addressing those things, you're going to find that, maybe I made a bad decision about this partner that I have. And addressing the unhappiness might require you to press reset. So, what do? I'm saying we put up with it because that's too difficult to do. And
Hmm.
then we justify putting up with it by the comfort. So, my argument is it is the comfort in the phrase that causes the trap and prevents you from addressing unhappiness. So, what you will find is that many people that end up in the divorce court is often driven to the divorce court when the comforts start disappearing and it opens the door for them to start dealing with the unhappiness. So step number one is kind of look at these comforts and say, I'm not going to allow the comforts in my life to be a trap for me. They are there to help me become happy. And if they are a trap, then I'm going to address them. I'm going to start working out how I get a little bit of independence so that it does not trap me, and then I can deal with the unhappiness. So that's kind of my take on it. It's a serious thing, and we all get ourselves into these traps, and then we think, where am I going to go? But you can. So deal with the comfortable part first.
What are the psychological or emotional patterns that make individuals accept dissatisfaction as normal?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of parts to that. There are a couple of moving parts to that, Siddharth. I think the first one is our upbringing. You know, we kind of have this concept, and you'll hear people talking about it often, is that what will the neighbors say?
Hmm.
What will society think? What will people think or say of me? And so we're kind of driven by this peer pressure about what other people will think and say. You know, I've portrayed that I've had this wonderful relationship and people have commented about it, but back at the ranch, they don't know what I'm going through. And so I buckle to the peer pressure. So that's number one. The second part is our parents. Very often they don't want to be associated with children that are divorced. And you go to a function, and often people are bragging about their children, how wonderful their children are, what they've achieved in life, and how happy their relationships are. That's how they make it out. They don't want to say, you don't go to a function and you hear somebody say, my son or my daughter was in a miserable relationship and I'm so happy they've moved on. They've got an opportunity to press reset. People don't do that. They want, and they kind of force their children to stay in these miserable environments. And so it's that pressure from both society on the one hand and family on the other side. And then there's a third element. It's you yourself. Too
Hmm.
often we think, am I going to go through this again? How am I going to make sure that I don't land in the same pickle again? And we become our own worst enemies through that process. And so that's what this movement is about, is kind of helping you to introspect, to say, let me look into myself. Let me understand a little bit about me. And am I getting what I really want out of life? I've got one life and I need to live it my way. And am I doing that? And if the answer is no, you got to do something about it.
How can someone identify the early signs that they are becoming comfortably unhappy in their relationship?
Yeah, I think it goes back to the question we spoke about earlier. I think step number one is to identify. So, we talk about these 7 things,
Okay.
and I argue that once you join the movement and you get a sense of these seven shades of purple, or the 7 characteristics of a relationship, you will identify which of those items are must list items for you and which are kind of wish list items. You say, I don't really need that, but if it's there, it's a nice to have. And when you identify and you are very clear in your mind that those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7 things, whatever they might be, are your must list items. These are the non negotiables. These are the things that you say, if I don't get this in a partner, my happiness is going to be compromised. Let's take, for example, if you say that communication for me is a must list item, I want somebody who I can speak to, somebody I can really engage with down to the soul and my core. If that's a must list item and you meet somebody who's not providing that, they're never present, they're not
Hmm.
around, they don't listen, this wonderful time that you spent when you're on honeymoon and dating fades so quickly, and they're not ticking that box, you've identified that it's a must list item. The red flag will show up very, very quickly, but you got to identify it as a must list item. But if it's not a must list item, you'll get by.
Right. What role does self-worth play in the decision to tolerate emotional discomfort in love?
Oh, it's everything. The tagline for this movement is the courage to know yourself. You know, Siddharth, we
Mhm.
are raised in a society where we put ourselves last. And a lot of our practices talk about, if you're going to be humble and you're going to present yourself as someone that expresses humility, it's about putting everybody else first and yourself last. And I can just imagine many people saying, oh, that's me. Everyone else. And I'm not talking about people pleasers here. I'm talking
Mm.
about every situation where everybody else matters before you. You don't know what you want. Everyone else's interest comes before yours. And what this movement is about is saying, at the nub of your unhappiness is the fact that sitting deep inside your soul is you. You got to understand what drives you, what inspires you, what motivates you, and most importantly, what makes you happy. And it's different for everybody. And when you are clear about what those things are, and you know who you are, you'll find space and you'll find meaning for you. And you will also not allow a partner to compromise you, to compromise your space, and to undermine you. And when you are able to do that, you almost guaranteed that that relationship is going to be lasting and stronger than it is now. But compromising yourself is actually inviting others to take advantage of you. If you don't respect you, if you don't love you, and you don't care about you, how on earth do you expect others to do that? So for me, it all starts with the man in the mirror. You have to look at yourself, fix that first, and everything else will start coming right.
Why do people fear leaving an unfulfilling relationship more than they fear staying unhappy in it?
I think the answer to that is dating, starting all over again, is just too much hard work.
Mm.
We you look at this thing and you think, oh my God, all over again. All the
Mm.
stuff I went through, it took me so long to get to where I am. I'm going to start all that all over again. And our society and the way we've done things. And then the other factor is that the success rate is not guaranteed. So you say, I'm going to
Mm.
ditch this one that I'm with. I'll start all over again. I'm going to go through all that pain again.
Mm.
And I will no guarantee that the next time around it's going to be better. The other thing about it, Siddharth, is it's also expensive. Just think
Mm.
about how much money you spend when you're dating or
Mm.
when you are gambling with the partner. You spend a lot of money on yourself. You make yourself look nice. You're taking this person out to various places. You're doing a lot of what I call mating dances. And those mating dances are expensive. So it's
Mm.
expensive to date, to mate, to kind of start finding a relationship. It's not a cheap thing. And you
Yeah.
look at all of those factors and you think, yeah, I'll stick with the one I got. And it's the wrong thing to do because you're going to be unhappy and it's going to cost you a lot of time and your
Mm.
psyche is going to go down the drain.
How does childhood experience or attachment style influence a person's tolerance for unhappiness in relationships?
I think there are two parts to that. Of course, the psychologists and the professionals will tell you every time you go and see a therapist, they drag you back to your childhood and they dig out all kinds
Mm.
of reasons why the way you were raised had everything to do with it. And I agree with that. The argument is you got to bend the stem when it's green. And in our childhood, when you're raised in good, healthy, loving relationships and family environments, you are well equipped to go into adulthood um, with the same principle. So, the way we raise our children, really important. But having said that, I also think that if you are not part of that loving, perfect relationship, if you're not part of that, and the argument is more than 50% of us are not part of that, this
Mhm.
lovely relationships and wonderful comfort environments that we kind of all aspire for, very few of us grow up in that. There's a lovely saying, let me just add here. There was a parent who was an alcoholic, and this parent had two kids. They were twins. The one child became an alcoholic, and the other one did not touch alcohol. And when they were asked why they did that, their response was exactly the same. They both said, I drink because my dad drank. What did you expect? And the other one said, I won't touch alcohol because my dad did. What do you expect? So you choose. You can make a choice about my environment. If it's great and wonderful, it must support you and take you through life. Absolutely wonderful. If it is not, you can look at it, allow it to build character in you, and then say to yourself, I'm going to be better than this, and I'm going to rise above it. That's what I did. I came from that environment that was not ideal. And I said, I'm going to rise above it and I'm going to make a difference. But it's a conscious choice. You do it, you look and you say, I can. I'm not going to allow the circumstances, nor am I going to blame the circumstances when my life's a failure, because it's easy to do that. And the world at large says, what were you expecting? He's raised in a township. He was in an environment with gangsterism, drugs, and all the evils. How can you expect anything else? My argument is you can. And particularly in our country, you can be the president tomorrow, even if you came from the townships. So you can. So your childhood environment fashions you and shapes you. And if the environment is great, really good for you. And I applaud that, and we must all try and work towards that. But on the other hand, if it was not, think of the story about the twins.
Right. What steps can someone take to break the cycle of comfort-based complacency in their partnership?
Yeah, I think it starts, and part of this movement, we are trying to focus on people where the relationships are just starting out. So we want to catch the problem before it sets roots. So I'm encouraging as many young people as possible. I'm talking to the Generation Z. I'm also talking to people that might have started addressing their unhappiness and are now looking to go through a second, a reset for the second time. I'm talking to you and I'm saying you have to do some serious introspection. Understand who you are. When you are able to do that, you will make a better decision. But if you're in a relationship, if you've taken the plunge, you've looked at it, and you're now starting to realize that maybe you didn't make the most informed decision, but actually your problem, you're comfortable. And you're starting to get a sense of some of the areas of unhappiness that might be on the horizon or might be settling into your relationship. And you're not quite sure how to address it. I'm saying step number one, get involved in this movement. Go and understand it and what the movement's going to do. There's a book as part of this movement. It's going to take you through a journey and a process that's going to help you understand you. And when you do that, you'll be able to identify exactly where the problem lies. Now, for example, somebody has a partner and the partner is never at home because they're playing golf, they're riding bikes, they're doing whatever, and they're never at home. And you hear somebody saying, I have a problem with my partner. We never sit and talk. Talking is not the problem. It is we have different interests, because if you took up golf or you rode a bicycle and you were riding next to your partner, then you'd be communicating. So maybe interest is the problem. So what this process is going to do, it's going to help you identify the root cause of the problem. And when you can understand that, it becomes a little easier to address. And I try as hard as I possibly can in the book to unpack those things. I don't give advice and I don't tell you what to do because I don't know what your problem is. But what I can do is tell you where the issues are and what are the things generally that you would need to introspect about in order to address the problem.
How can couples gently confront the truth of their unhappiness without causing blame or conflict?
Yeah, I think that's the first thing, and I think as part of this introspection process, I encourage everybody that joins this movement to make one statement before they join it. You know, the Alcoholics Anonymous has a wonderful opening line. You know, they kind of make you stand up and say, "I'm Darin and I'm an alcoholic." And once you acknowledge that, the rest of the rehabilitation process is easy. I want to do something similar in this movement. It's to say, when I get into a relationship and when there's problems, I'm going to start out by saying the problem lies more with me and less with my partner. Let me understand what I can do. Let me take responsibility rather than sit on the moral high ground, point fingers, and blame the other person. So when you can start out with you, say, I made a bad decision. You actually not quite, you're not a bad person. You're just not good enough for me, or I'm not good enough, whatever the case. But start with you, and then that healing process becomes a whole lot easier.
At what point does comfortably unhappy become emotionally damaging? And at what should someone do that?
Well, see that I think the emotional aspect of it is going to start kicking in very, very quickly, and it's a slow process. It's going to erode. It's like a termite. And from the outside, you're not going to see it. It's going to get into your soul. It's going to start eating you from the inside, and you're almost not going to see it happening. As an individual, you'll start feeling it. You know, those moments laying in the bathtub, standing in the shower, when you're by yourself, those thoughts that come across that you're starting to question, those are the signs. And it's going to start eating you from the inside. Do not wait until it's eaten the core of you and then you collapse, because when you do that, there's going to be nothing left of you. That's what termites do to trees. Don't allow this termite principle to happen to you. Identify it early, get rid of it, deal with it, confront it. It's uncomfortable, but the earlier you do it, the better it is, because you do not want to be trapped in comforts that compromise your happiness, and then you go to your grave one day as an old guy or old lady and you say, you know, what was the purpose of my life? I achieved so much, I built so much material stuff, but at the end of the day, I died unhappy. We go to too many funerals where that's the picture. I'm saying, let's do something about it. Let's try and make a difference, and let's be a happier crowd.
All right. Finally, what practical tools or daily habits can help individuals build the courage to seek healthier, more fulfilling relationships?
Yeah, we've spoken about this. So there are loads of stuff. Step number one, I think you got to start introspecting about what blows your hair back. And I would encourage you, and we know this is not easy, and not everybody's got the luxury of, you know, lots of money laying around to go and sit with a therapist for a few sessions before they
Mm,
get to the nub of what the problem is. So what we've done as part of this movement, Siddharth, is that we've kind of identified the key areas, and we have created some really playful tools. It's free for most of it. Just join the movement, go around, fiddle with it, play with it. And I almost guarantee you, when you do that, you're going to start saying, there's the one. You're going to identify. Let's say, for example, if in your relationship, one of those termite issues is money, I've created a tool for that. Go in, it'll help you introspect about money. And it might ask you a simple question like, are you a spender or a saver? And just through the reflection of that one question, you might uncover and unearth a whole lot of stuff about you and your partner that will lead to conversations. Now you can say, come check this app out. Yeah, go and do your buxometer. Let me do mine. Let's have coffee. Let's talk about it. And it's in a playful way. So you'll kind of laugh about it. But it will start unearthing the real issues. So there are loads of those kind of tools, and I'm updating it all the time. The latest little gadget that I'm playing around with now is a stress meter, is to help you understand your stress level so that you can have conversations in an environment that's not stressful. But there's enough there now to start with. I think join the movement, go on there and play around with them, and you'll start discovering you'll start having more meaningful conversations. And I hope that you identify exactly where the problem lies.
All I got to say, thanks so much for your time once again, and look forward to the next one.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it as well. Thank you for the time, and thank you for the listeners.